Hey friends, in today's watercolor tutorial, I'm going to be teaching how to paint Congaree National Park from South Carolina. Without further ado, let's get painting. In today's tutorial, I'll be using Terra Verte, Naples Yellow, Orange, Sap Green, Perylene Green, VanDyke Brown, and Prussian Blue by Winsor Newton. I'll also be using a little bit of white gouache for some highlighting in our water. And the paper I've taped down here is a size 5 by 7 inches. And I'll be using a size 6, size 16, and size 2 round Princeton brush. To get started, I'm going to saturate my page here fully with water all the way to the edges with the tape. And we're going to be utilizing a lot of wet and wet technique in this particular landscape. Okay, so once you have your whole page nicely saturated, we're going to start with our lighter color first. And I'm going to start by doing kind of a light wash of some Naples yellow. And I'm just taking my size 16 brush and just saturating the top here with a little bit of a base that's kind of watered down of the Naples yellow. And the most concentrated area of the Naples yellow is going to be right in this kind of center area. And then from here, I'm going to apply some Naples yellow down below, more so just in the center area where our water will be. Then from here, I'm gonna take a little bit of orange, kind of watered down, so not too bright. And I'm just gonna add just a couple pops of orange, kind of on the edges of that Naples yellow area. And then I'll do the same thing on the left and right side of this reflected area down below. From here, I'm gonna clean my brush and start working with our kind of neutral muted green, which is the Terra Verte color. And I'm just going to apply a good amount of this along the edges. And I'm making sure to dip my water in plenty of water as I apply more color, just to keep kind of a even coat and saturation of color that's able to bleed and blend together, just maintaining that wet and wet kind of look and style. So I just applied that green all along the edges. It looks like I have some of that color kind of like crumbling a little bit. So I'm just gonna take my brush just to kind of brush that aside and take that away. Okay. And next I wanna do the same thing down below. Again, reapplying with water first before I dip my brush in my color. I just wanna kind of maintain this subtle reflection down below. So we're just kind of mimicking that same color formation and palette. I'm going up against the edges of the orange and the Naples yellow just to kind of buff it out and blend it a little bit more smoothly in the transition between that and the faded little green shade that we have here. And I'm gonna go ahead and fill in this in-between area as well. Okay, so now I'm gonna take a little bit of Prussian Blue and just add a few subtle pops of blue. And again, I'm dipping my brush in water before I grab my Prussian Blue just to maintain this watery look. So I'm just gonna add a few pops of that vibrant blue. And then I'm gonna just take some water with my brush and just kind of add some more water alongside the edges and transition areas. So I'm gonna add a little bit more water layered on top of that orange and yellow area. Just to help like smooth it out just slightly. And then from there, I'm gonna take Prussian Blue and do the same thing, kind of in the corners mainly, and then just all the way across the bottom edge here. And again, I'm going to dip in water and just kind of smooth out that transition slightly. And then take a little bit more water and just kind of let it blend and bleed along the transition areas even more. If you feel like your yellow or orange is fading out a little, you can always reapply a couple pops. So I'm just reapplying a couple pops of the orange and then a little bit of that yellow. Okay, so now what we can do next is work with our wet and wet trees. And before we apply like the actual trunks, I want to add some plain sap green. And I'm going to switch gears to my size 6 brush instead of my size 16. And using just the plain sap green, I want to add a little bit of tree texture. So I'm just going to take a good, nice concentrated amount of sap green and kind of blot it loosely just to get this like kind of faded, soft, subtle foliage that kind of bleeds and blends. And I'm adding just a few areas. So top right corner, did some in the center just here. I'm going to bring just a few little blots of it, overlapping slightly on the orange and yellow areas. I'm going to add some more in this lower left region, maybe a little bit more up top, allowing some of the blue to pop through. Again, this part is super just simple and loose. I'm going to add a few more bits of that sap green here as well. Okay, and then down below, I want to add a few pops of sap green as well in this area. So this reflection down below can be even more loose and watery, so I'm not too worried about getting some more defined areas of foliage. I kind of want it to look really subtle and faded, so I'm just adding just a few pops of the green. And before I move on, I'm going to add some more Terra Verte in the center. I'm going to just do a little sketch line. This is where the land meets the reflection of the water down below. And I am just going to paint kind of a subtle half inch or so of textured greenery, just to kind of help divide the water line and the tree line, or where the land is just above. And then from here, I'm going to take a little bit of water and just subtly blot out some of that Terra Verte just to get some texture. Okay, wonderful. And then next, I want to take a little bit of Perylene Green this time, which is a nice, deep, vibrant green, one of my favorite, most used colors. And I am going to add some starting in these left corners. Again, just carrying on with my size 6 brush for now. This is just going to add a little bit more depth and dimension to our reflective water. And then I'm going to add just a few horizontal streaks going left to right, just a few dashes of this Perylene Green where our water line is indicated right here. I'm just going to go down below that and just add these little subtle dashes just to give the essence of some ripples in the water. So that way we have that kind of movement. Okay, and then from here, I'm going to take a little bit of Perylene Green and just subtly outline the bottom of that area that we laid out horizontally to mimic just the land where it's meeting the water. And then from here, I'm going to just take a wet brush and just subtly kind of blend it in the Terra Verte above, just in these like really loose brushwork texture, just kind of like almost like a zigzag up and down. Okay, next I want to mix up some VanDyke Brown with a touch of Sap Green. This is going to be our trunk color. And we're going to just start to build our trunks here. And I'm going to start with the tree towards the left. Now our page is still slightly damp, so we may need to relayer a few of the trees, but I just want to get a few just like wet and wet, looser trees laid out. So I'm going to start in the center area and just do a thin tree with really light pressure using the tip of my size 6 brush. So there's our first tree. And then while we're at it, I'm going to paint a very subtle reflection of that tree, but I'm going to give a few gaps. So I don't want it to be like a perfect line as the reflection. Like there's going to be a little bit of variegation here where the foliage maybe cuts off reflection and things like that. So there's our first tree. And I'm going to make sure the base of the tree is nice and wide in comparison to the rest of the trunk. That's very typical of these types of trees in Congaree National Park. I believe that they're called champion trees. And then towards the left, I want to do another tree. Maybe it's slightly thinner, but the base is always slightly wider than the rest of the tree. And then I'm just going to carry on with adding some subtle loose reflection of that tree down below, allowing the water to kind of blend it out naturally. And then from here, I want to do maybe a tree that's nice and dainty, but slightly crooked off towards the left, almost like it's conjoined with the former tree that we just did. And then from there, I'm just going to do a slightly crooked angled reflection, leaving some gaps as well. Okay, and then next I'll do maybe like a medium-sized one off here towards the left that's slightly angled. And the base is nice and wide. And as needed, you can always mix some more of that VanDyke Brown with the Sap Green. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and paint a reflection. With some gaps. From here, I want to do maybe a small tree, just straight and vertical. And then next, I want to just do maybe just a few more small trees. Let's see. Let's do maybe just a couple smaller ones. I'll do one off towards this right edge that's slightly angled towards the right. And again, I'm always widening the base slightly. And then I will go ahead and paint that reflection. And then I'll do maybe one more small one right here. And then just paint another subtle little reflection with some gaps. And then I'll do one more small tree off towards the left. So nice and narrow. Okay, and then from here, I would like to paint a couple larger trees. So I'm going to mix more of the VanDyke Brown with some Sap Green. And I want one large tree kind of slightly overlapping in the water just a bit. I'm just painting a really just kind of rough edge as the base, about 1 inch wide. And then as the tree starts to elongate, it's going to get slightly more thinner than the base. And then from there, I'm just going to use this color just to fill in and overlap all on the inside of the tree here. And then from there, I would like to do another tree slightly overlapped over the water line. That's kind of in the flood zone. And again, the base is going to be slightly wider than the top. And then I'm just going to fill in with our mixed brown-green color. And then I think I just want one more slightly larger tree. I'm just kind of trying to debate on the placement. I'm going to go ahead and mix more of my brown and sap green. Okay, so, you know, what I think I'll do is paint a tree that's slightly underlap behind this left one here, this big one, and the base is just going to come out a little bit towards the right. And then it's just going to be slightly thinner than the one towards the left, but still kind of on the chunkier side compared to our smaller trees. All right, and then I'm just going to take my tree color and just fill that right on in. Okay, and now I want to take this color and paint a really loose reflection of these larger trees. So I'm going to go ahead and just take my brush, slightly water down that color, and paint a really just loose reflection. So I'm going to apply some color, then take some water just to kind of brush out the reflection slightly. And then I need to also mimic the reflection of that secondary tree. And then last but not least, we will do our tree reflection for this tree as well, just right in between. Okay, and now I am going to add just a little bit more greenery in here. So I'm going to layer up a little bit more sap green and just add a little bit more texture with the sap green. And you can even slightly overlap on some of the trunks. So I'm just going to add a few pops of some more concentrated sap green just to add even more detail. I'm going to add a little bit more green over on this right edge of the reflection and some over on this left edge as well. All right, and then next I want to add a little bit of detail on the left side of our trees to give some shading. So I'm going to use a combination of Perylene Green with some VanDyke Brown just to darken that color a little bit. And using that color, I'm just going to go on the left side of our trees, mainly our forefront trees that we kind of made larger. And I'm just going to add a little bit of texture, just doing these vertical lines. But especially on the left side is where I really want some definition, just to help define the tree. And then I'm just adding a few dashes along the trunk. I'll go ahead and do the same thing on this other tree, just defining that left side. And then just a few subtle dashes. I think I'm going to shade this kind of crooked one as well. Maybe at least just the bases of the other trees, just to help kind of define them just a little bit. And then especially on this large tree, I'm going all the way up the trunk. And then I'm just going to do a few loose vertical dash marks just to texturize that trunk. And then from here, I want to paint just a few branches. So I'm just going to water down that blend of paint that we just painted with, the Perylene Green and the VanDyke Brown. And I just want to add just a few kind of angled branches here and there that are kind of loose, but just so that way we can kind of see where our foliage is connected from. So I'm just doing a couple kind of angled dash lines and branches that are just really loose. And just kind of connecting all that foliage. So that way it doesn't look like it's like kind of floating in space. So just a few angled dash lines will do the trick for that. Okay, and then from here, I want to kind of paint just a little bit of Terra Verte green in this white gap that we kind of have, just to kind of tone it down just a little bit. And then from here, I'm going to take a little bit of Prussian Blue and mix it into some of the Perylene Green with a touch of VanDyke Brown and just kind of water it down a little bit so it's not too potent. But I just want to add a few more horizontal dash lines, and I'm kind of placing them even over the tree reflection as well. I'm just kind of moving my size 6 brush just all the way across, leaving some gaps. This is just a nice like subtle hint of some water ripples. And then I'm just taking my brush with some water just to kind of buff out these streaks just a little bit. And then last but not least, I am going to use my size 2 brush this time. And there is a fly in our midst. Whoops. Anywho, I'm going to use some white gouache just to add a few pops of white highlights. And I'm just gonna add some water to my gouache just to kind of loosen it up. And I just want to add just a few hints of the white gouache. Doesn't need to be too much, but I just want a few subtle pops of some white lighting hitting the water and just kind of glistening. So mainly in the center area. And then from there, once I've applied the white gouache, I'm going to water down my size 2 brush and just kind of buff this out a little bit more. Not too much to where you don't see it anymore and it just dilutes completely, but just along those edges, just to act as a nice kind of highlight. There is a fly flying around me right now. Oh dear. I don't know where this fly came from. Okay, so you've got some subtle white highlighting going on, which I love. That just makes the water pop. And I'm just kind of looking at our foliage here, and I really like how this has turned out. I feel like it's got just a nice wet and wet kind of look to it. And what's nice is that we didn't have to let certain stages of the painting dry. We were just able to paint this painting in one sitting, so that's always nice. Thank you so much for joining me for today's watercolor tutorial on Congaree National Park. I hope that you enjoyed this one and that it was a good video to learn some more wet and wet watercolor technique. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any further tutorials. And be sure to comment down below what you enjoyed about this painting and also what kind of landscape you would like to see next.